Good afternoon, and welcome to this month's training video. So the topic of this month's training video is the repeater system that is currently housed in Safety 1. So the things that we're going to talk about today is why this is not really called a repeater system, and then the two phases of operation, and that includes how to set it up for phase 2, as well as how pre-planning for your first and second due companies at your facilities, why that's so important. So let's talk about what a repeater really is. So a true repeater takes a signal that it hears, it boosts that signal to a higher frequency, which makes that signal travel over a longer distance. If you think about it in wildland firefighting or forestry firefighting, where you're having to communicate over a large span of distances, a repeater could be set in the middle of that, and that way it breaks that signal down in half, and then it pushes that signal at a higher frequency out to the rest of the crews operating. That's one way a repeater could be used. A second way a repeater could be used is if you're in a high-rise operation, or you are doing working structure fires in a commercial setting where you have a lot of brick metal between the two crews. A repeater could be placed in the middle of that building so that the two crews can operate and be able to talk to each other. So let's talk about why this is not really a repeater. So we talked about what a true repeater is. Here in the Greensboro Fire Department, we don't really have a true repeater. What we do have that is helpful for us is a connector. It connects radios together, whether it could be on the same TAC channel or it could be on a different TAC channel, or it could be VR, whichever operation that we're working in. So where's the practical application for us? Everyone in every fire station in their territory has what we call like a trouble spot for communications, where there may be a signal 10 location they can't get out. So this is where this box comes into play for us, or even the one that's mounted, the component that's mounted inside of Safety 1. In Engine 7's territory, Engine 1, and Engine 14, we have 1700 Fairview Street. So if you're not familiar with that building, 1700 Fairview Street used to be part of the old Cone Mills building. It's a Type 3 classification building where it's heavy timber, and they've converted that building into apartment housing and living. So basically, concrete floors, a lot of steel, just a really heavy, durable building. The problem for us is potentially when we respond to that building, Engine 1 could be operating on Division 1 or Division 2. Engine 7, they could be in one of the subdivisions. And then Ladder 7, for instance, they could be on the roof division. Now, what helps us with this box is whatever that box hears, it's going to connect the radios together. So Engine 7, who's in subdivision, potentially, they may not be able to communicate with Ladder 7, who's on the roof division, because this is so far away, and the amount of interference has got to go through in order to be able to communicate. The battalion chief, who's on the Alpha division outside, he could probably hear everybody because of the proximity to where he is to the units. But the danger in that is he may be able to give instructions to Engine 7, who may be in subdivision, but they may not hear that transmission. So that could be dangerous for us. So if you think about if you need to evacuate a building because things have gone wrong during the operations, Engine 7 potentially could not hear that transmission. So what this box helps us to do, and the mounted version of it inside of Safety 1, it connects all the signals that it hears, and it can patch everybody together. So for instance, if Engine 7 is on VR and Ladder 7 is on TAC Alpha 4, then those two channels are now merged together, and so everyone can hear the same information, the same radio traffic as it comes across, whether you're on VR or you're on the TAC channel. So let's talk about phase 2. So we discussed phase 1 of this operation, which is basically the VR, we're going to call it the connector or repeater, is mounted inside of Safety 1. But if the crews get too far in a building and Safety 1 is unable to get to where they are working, then we have to go to phase 2. So phase 2 is what we're going to call our mobile operations. So if you pan over to our box here, we'll see this orange box. It is housed in the back of Safety 1. So now, why is this important? Well, this is important because if we've moved into this operation, then Safety One personnel is probably not with our vehicle. So we're dependent on uh, units that are standing by to help set this up. So this is why this part is important. So if you look at this box, all the components are housed inside that box, and we're going to talk about how to set it up, the components, and how to turn on the VR repeater connector radio. So you have two antennas. It's a yellow, and then you have a green. So that's your antennas to get out, and they're color coded. So yellow goes yellow, green goes to green, and they screw in. Pretty simple. It needs a power source. So your red cable goes into your input to get power, and from this point, you're ready to go. And let me just mention these antennas. They're magnetic. So if we're working in a metal building, you can stick them up in a door frame. Ideally, they don't need to be too close to each other. They need to be somewhat apart, just so you can get a good signal. From that point, you're ready to go. So this is how we turn on our repeater or connector. So if you look at it, it says VR off channel 1 antenna. All right there. So right now, that radio is in normal operations, is not acting as a connector of any sort. There's a middle button, it's called VRS. We hit that button, and it starts flashing. And then we hit it again, and it says Systems Channel Antenna. So when it says System Channel Antenna, we know that we're patched into the system. So whatever channel they're working on, if they're on TAC Alpha 4, then we can turn this to TAC Alpha 4. This is just like a mobile radio that might be on all the trucks. If crews have already committed to working on to Fire VR, they can stay on Fire VR. However, the signal is a lot more clearer when it's on a TAC channel because of the higher frequency. So obviously on fire grounds, we don't want to change radios no more than we need to because we lose people. So as long as those crews are operating on Fire VR internally and they can get out, then they can stay on Fire VR. But if they start having some issues, then they can go to the TAC channel that we were originally working on, and they can be passed into the system. So that's pretty much it. That's why it's important for other crews outside the Safety One personnel to understand how to set this up, because if we're having to go into phase 2, then we won't be with our vehicle, and someone needs to be able to set it up and have a power source. So that concludes our discussion or our training for this month on how to operate the repeater or the connector of radios. So as you do your pre-plans in your territory, just keep your mics and make sure that you don't have a signal 10 location. And talking to Captain Strayer, and he's been really instrumental with helping me to understand the connector myself. So thanks to him. But he says that buildings change. So it may not have been a signal 10 location last year, but depending on what's going on around that building, it could be a signal 10 location this year. So we would never know that unless we are doing our pre-plans and we understand that building, something has changed within that building. So feel free to contact any of us in Safety One so that you can get a full hands-on knowledge of how to set this up. This is pretty quick, but I think it's still good information to have. But any one of us will be more than willing to come out to the station to help as part of our battalion training to help, talk about it, set it up so that we can, the more information that we know, the better off we'll be as a department. So that concludes our training for this month. Thank you guys, and be safe out there.